Alright, if I had to pick an impossible memory out of millions and millions to think of, probably could narrow it down to about 3. And I'm thinking the first one would have to be the earliest memory. It's riding on the tractor with the riding mower with my grandpa in Minerva, Ohio. And he was the first person to take me for a ride, not even my dad. And then another early one would be waiting outside the door when he showered, like laying on the floor looking to see if his feet would hit the ground, so I knew that was when it was time to go golfing. And then most recently is just sitting back with him in the basement. We'd watch the Lawrence Welk show together, or we'd go to the farm and watch MeTV. I'll never forget those.
My memory is him playing pool because we were playing a competition and he always was like, I'm gonna beat him. But the first round he didn't, and so then he crushed me. It was 6-9, and he said, good game. It was awesome, so that's my favorite memory. My favorite memory is playing pool with Grandpa because he was always competitive, and he was, I'm going to beat him, and it was always fun because he was super competitive, and I loved it.
That grandpa was better at me in golf than I was.
How much better?
Like, he would always beat me. Maybe every once in a while I'd beat him on a hole, but in the overall he would beat me in the whole game.
I hear he was pretty competitive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you had fun with him though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for the memory.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm Dean Adams, and I'm one of the mowers, the mission mowers. There was 4 of us, and now we've lost 2 of them already now. But the mission mowing that we did, we kept, I don't know how many lawns, 9, usually 8 or 9 lawns, and kept them clean, made look great. We had a great time mowing, the 4 of us, Don, John, and Ralph and I. But anyway, it was a heck of a good project, and we really had a great time doing that, and then having coffee afterwards, iced tea. You bet. Okay, thank you.
Wait, there you go.
My favorite memory with Grandpa is every time we went golfing, he'd let me drive in the golf cart, and I would always go way too fast, and he'd try and stop it. And it was just always fun having those crazy golf rides.
All right, very good.
My favorite memory was, so whenever when we went shopping, we would go out every single time in his truck, and Oma would blast the heat in the car, and Grandpa would tell me about how he had to go through that, and I can't remember.
Did it get too hot for him, did it?
And I said no.
All right.
Okay, I'm gonna do a different one. I loved how he was competitive. Like, he was really competitive when we were playing pool and in the basement. And like, if he accidentally I wasn't very good. And like Grandpa, like sometimes he would accidentally get the 8-ball in and he would lose. And he would want to play again to make sure that he could win. Like if I won, like he would say, okay, now we're gonna do another game to see who wins that.
So sometimes he let you win, huh? He didn't? Ooh. He
really
was
did
competitive.
not like to lose.
He was competitive. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Hi, my name is Stan Slesser, and Ralph and I were great friends going clear back into elementary school. And one of the strongest memories I have of Ralph is going over and staying all night at his house for birthday parties. We'd play all the day and then play all night, and I'd get back home and sleep 15, 16 hours straight, to the point where my parents were shaking me trying to get me awake. And I always said nobody could play harder than Ralph. And then came 8th grade, and Ralph left us for good reasons. We were all so sad, but moving down, of course, to the farm. We reconnected again 40 years later. And I just want to say that the world did not change Ralph. He had all the wonderful qualities that I remembered as a young person. He carried them over. His enthusiasm for life, his enthusiasm for people, his enthusiasm for his God. And he certainly ran the race. He fought the good fight. And he is so impressive. I will dearly miss him. Condolences to the family. What a terrific example he set. Thank you.
All right.
My name is Jen Slaughter. I joined the church, I should say rejoined the church this past September. Ralph had come out to the farm where I live and invited me to come back, and people had been asking if I wouldn't be willing to come back so we could get a voice in the choir and someone in the Bible studies. Which, when I first moved here in '94, I was here for about 8 years. I was with the choir and Bible study. And his exuberance is what attracted me so much. And he's always was boisterous about his greetings with everybody. He was always full of it. It was not put on. You knew it was not false. It was the true person. And his feelings came out in the preaching and everything about how he felt about his God and his relationship with the Savior. And his favorite song I heard was My First Day in Heaven. And now he's had it. And I'm sure he's been enjoying it. So I have appreciated all these weeks with him, and I will be missing him.
Amen. Thanks, Jan.
I'm Bob Bowen. I'm a childhood friend of Ralph back to the Rhinebeck days. I don't know how much time we need to put into this video. I could talk for probably much longer than you'd like to hear, but I think an interesting story to start with is how Ralph and I first became friends. We were both in 3rd grade. We were outside at recess playing football one day. Just a little pickup football game between a handful of us. And Ralph had the ball in his hand. He was the quarterback, of course. And he threw it to me across the goal line for a touchdown. And Ralph immediately celebrated that by referring to it as our tricky little pass. And I don't know what was tricky about it other than the fact that I caught it, maybe. That was amazing in itself. But anyway, from that point on, we started to hang out together at school, and we really truly did become best friends all through elementary and into junior high when Ralph moved away in 8th grade. It really was one of the saddest days of my elementary years when Ralph told me that he was going to move and was not going to be in our school anymore. And we managed to have some contact yet, but as oftentimes happens, you go your separate ways. Ralph always used to talk about moving to the Union Winton School District, which really wasn't that far from Rhinebeck, but just far enough. We didn't compete, although we did play our two schools did schedule a baseball game our senior years and played against each other. But other than that, we'd had no high school contact, and Ralph's Union Winton teams were not very successful. And he used to kind of bemoan the fact that he left Rhinebeck, where we had quite successful seasons, and I think he kind of regretted the fact that he didn't get to be part of that, and he would have been a big part of it. Ralph was a really good athlete. We played Little League Baseball together. We were on the same team. I'm sure if this is a family listening to this, I'm sure he's mentioned his days with the Pirates. That was our Little League name. Ralph was our pitcher. We won the championship every year, and Ralph was probably one of the 2 or 3, if not the best player in the league. He was really a good player. And then we kind of drifted apart. Well, one other thing I was going to add, when we were young in elementary school, Ralph loved to have overnight guests, and oftentimes multiple ones. And each year on his birthday, his parents would let him have as many overnight guests as he was years old. So we'd have like 9, 10, 11. He'd add another one each year. And we'd go over and spend a night and play games and play basketball or football. Ralph was the kid. I always said this to my kids growing up. He was the one kid that had the first new toy. He had them all. The little electric football game with the vibration that the players. Ralph was the first one I ever saw have that. He had a pool table in their farmhouse basement, and it was not a finished basement like a rec room. It was a cellar. But his dad liked to play pool. Lawrence was a pool player, and Ralph had a pool table. So I'd never seen a pool table, probably anywhere, but certainly not in a house. He had the first color television in their family that I ever saw. But he had everything, so it was a fun house to go to. Ralph was so much fun to play with, and he was so competitive. But when the overnight stay was over, it was usually then Saturday night and then Sunday. Of course, we'd go to church. Ralph would invite us all to go to church with him, and then we'd go to our separate homes after that. And first thing I'd do when I got home is I'd lay down on the couch. I was exhausted. I'd sleep the rest of the afternoon away. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit. After we'd kind of gone our separate ways, I'd gone to college, Ralph had gone to college, I was teaching and coaching in Northwest Iowa, and Ralph ended up serving a church in Worthington, Minnesota, an hour and a half away. And we found out that about each other, so we kind of reconnected. And one weekend, Ralph invited me and my wife to come up for a weekend. Just like the old days, one of the things we did was off to the gym, the Y, played basketball, and the next day after we went to church with Ralph, we got in our car and drove an hour and a half back home. I think I got about 2 miles out of town, and I pulled off the side of the road and I said to my wife, "You're driving, I need to sleep." It's just like it was when I was in 5th grade. He wore me out. My guess was Ralph went back in and probably didn't sleep a wink. He was ready to go again. But anyway, those are really some fond memories. And then as time went by, of course, Ralph eventually went to Ohio. So once again, we kind of lost contact. We were so far apart. And then he comes back to Iowa. And even though I lived in Burlington, a few hours away from here, we still found each other. By this time, myself and some of our other Rhinebeck High School classmates, schoolmates, were retired and had some time on our hands. We started doing group trips together. And I organized several of them. We would go to Cub baseball games. We'd go to Iowa basketball games. We did several of those kinds of trips over the last 6, 7 years probably. And Ralph, whenever it was available, would join us. And he seemed to enjoy it as much as we enjoyed having him, reconnect again. And of course, some of the same old stories were told, but they're fun to tell those same stories years later. And I guess I'm going to sum this all up with one kind of statement about Ralph. When I think back to what he was like as a kid that I remember growing up, and then what I learned about him when we reconnected, there wasn't a whole lot of difference. And I just the thought that ran through my mind, Ralph Norman was a 10-year-old in a 74-year-old body. thank you. And certainly my sympathies to the family. And I have many, many fond memories, as I'm sure you do too. And I hope those are the kind of memories that will sustain you through this difficult time. But you've got a wonderful husband, father, and grandfather to always remember. And I'm glad I got to be a little part of his life. Thank you.
Okay, one thing that my grandpa would always do is he would always have a joke, and at the dinner table he would always tell us about his new joke that he just learned, and he would be so proud of it. So that's one memory I have of my grandpa.
Lots of stories I could tell, but one of the things that are very important to us is we spent an awfully lot of Sunday nights together with Ralph and Chris, and ministering that way one to another. Small groups where we have anywhere from 6 to maybe 12 people coming into the home and sharing together. And not only did we share together in worship, but also in fellowship afterwards. Very important. And for ministers particularly, it's not easy to have somebody to confide in and to visit with. So we use that opportunity to kind of build each other up. Hopefully that will be something that is remembered in the future. We spent a lot of Thursday nights in Bible study together, the same thing. Coffee shop on Tuesdays and prayer times on Monday mornings. And all these are precious memories, and I pray that they're going to continue. Those things will continue. And we can share together and minister to Chris and come by and support her in all the things that she needs to have done. So, Chris, we love you, and we want to continue to minister with you as best we can. Thank you.
What do you think?
All right, we're rolling.
Okay, well, I have a lot of good memories, but one that's probably the most vivid or prominent is whenever Grandpa would get me ice cream. He knew how much I loved ice cream, and he loved ice cream too. That's why whenever he asked me if I wanted it, or if he knew I was if he knew I was coming or whatever, he would go and get some ice cream. But I think it was also an excuse for him to eat ice cream himself, because he would even have it when I was there, and he'd just go out and get a whole nother gallon of ice cream, or half gallon or whatever. But yeah, I can't think of anything else. But so another memory, I guess, was when we would play pool downstairs. I had never played pool in my life, and Grandpa's like, "Oh yeah, you should try it." And so I surprisingly was doing better than I thought, and Grandpa did not want to lose to a rookie, so if I was beating him, he would just up the ante and be like, "Okay, best out of 3," and then I'd win 2 out of 3 or whatever, then he'd be like, "Okay, best out of 5," and it wasn't until he won that the game was finished. So yeah.
All right.
Okay. So what Grandpa always was proud of was the things that he would find at bargain stores, and it could be the most useless item ever, and he'd I don't know. He'd say he would get it for he'd make us guess first. He'd be like, "Guess how much I got this for." I just
1 cent.
And I'd throw a number out there, I don't know, $5, and he's like, $1.75, and I'm like, "Oh, that's so great!" And it'd be, I don't know. And then I know our Oma would get just upset about it. She'd be like, "You're
That's a waste of money."
She's like, "What are you doing with that?" And then she'd just say like, "You're taking that to the farm," and he's like, well, he'd still be proud of it no matter what. So.
And he finds like a useless pen on the floor, and guess how much I found this for?
Or no, yeah, on his walks or whatever, he'd find things like golf balls or whatever, and one time
I found something for free, and it doesn't even work.
One time he brought home this cylinder thing, and he's like, "Look, Chris, I found a whistle on my walk or whatever," and she's like, "I don't think that's a whistle." He already had blown in it, and I think it was a like vape pen or something. I was like, "Oh, that's nice."
Wait, he blew in it? It was on the floor?
Oh yeah, that's what Grandpa does. He doesn't care.
Bruh. It was awesome.
Yeah. Anyway, that's all I
So my husband Sean grew up at Minerva FCC with Ralph, and I was over at the Lutheran Church, and that's where I grew up. And for years, once we got married, I drug Sean over to the Lutheran Church, and for years Ralph kept saying that we needed to come to Minerva FCC, but I was the choir director at the Lutheran Church and was adamant that we weren't going anywhere. But eventually we did join Minerva First Christian, and Ralph just absolutely loved that, and every time I saw him he would say, "We finally got you over here. We finally got you away from those Lutherans and finally got you over to Minerva First Christian." And of course it always followed by, "We're so happy to have you here." But he was a huge part of my life, and obviously my husband's life growing up, but also my children's life. And just very important to my kids. And Chris taught them at Minerva First Christian School, and they just such a blessing to us, and we love you, Chris, and we love Ralph very, very much. So thank you.
Hi there, it's Connie Brewer. I just had a few things to say about Ralph. He was such a kind gentleman and very fun to be around, and especially in Minerva First Christian Church Choir. We had such a fun time in the tenor section, of course. So, but love you very much, Chris, and always will love Ralph. Thanks.